Most people talk to ChatGPT every day without ever asking the most important question: how does it actually work? How can a machine respond in full sentences, explain complex ideas, or even sound creative? The truth is much simpler than you might expect, and much more fascinating. In this video, we'll break down ChatGPT and large language models in the clearest way possible, using no jargon, no technical equations, and no computer science background. Just simple logic, everyday comparisons, and an intuitive story of how a machine predicts words so well that it begins to feel intelligent. Let's uncover how this technology really works, one simple idea at a time. How can a machine write like a human? How can a computer answer questions, explain ideas, or even sound thoughtful, funny, or creative? It feels almost magical. But it isn't magic, it's patterns. Patterns learned from a massive amount of text, combined with mathematics so good that it starts to look like understanding. Today, we're going to break down ChatGPT and large language models in the simplest way possible. No jargon, no equations, no deep computer science. Just a clear explanation of how a machine that doesn't think, feel, or understand the world can still generate responses that seem intelligent. Let's begin with the core idea. ChatGPT is something called a large language model. That might sound complicated, but the simplest definition is this: a large language model is a system trained to predict the next word in a sentence. That's it. But doing that one simple task millions of times across billions of sentences creates something far more powerful than it sounds. Imagine playing a game where you guess the next word in this sentence. The cat climbed up the... You might guess tree chair or stairs. You're using your sense of language based on all the sentences you've seen in your life. ChatGPT does exactly that, except it has seen far more sentences than any human ever could. So let's break down step by step how this works. First, ChatGPT does not think like a human. It does not understand meaning the way we do. It does not have emotions, intentions, beliefs, or awareness. It's not conscious, not self-aware, and not secretly alive. It's a prediction engine predicting the next token or tiny piece of text over and over again. But predictions can be powerful, with enough examples and enough training patterns emerge. And when a model learns the patterns of language at a huge scale, the results start looking like intelligence. To understand how ChatGPT learns these patterns, let's walk through the training process. Training starts with collecting text. Lots of text. Books, articles, websites, public forums, open educational resources, billions and billions of words. Humans write differently, depending on the topic, emotion, culture, situation, and intention. The training data is filled with all of that variety. The model doesn't copy the text. It doesn't store full sentences and repeat them later. Instead, it analyzes how language works, which words tend to follow other words, how sentences are structured, how ideas are explained, how stories unfold, how questions get answered. Slowly, the model begins to form an internal map of language, not as meaning, but as probability. For example, the phrase peanut butter and is often followed by jelly. The phrase once upon a time is usually followed by the start of a story. The phrase in conclusion often leads to a summary. The model doesn't know what peanut butter is. It doesn't know what conclusions are. But it sees patterns, and patterns become predictions. This brings us to something important. ChatGPT doesn't operate on words like we do. It operates on tokens, which are small pieces of text. A token might be a word or half a word, or even a single letter. This helps ChatGPT handle different languages, names, technical phrases, and creative wording. Now let's talk about neural networks, but in the simplest possible way. Picture millions of tiny switches. Each switch represents a small numerical value. During training, the model adjusts these switches again and again, trying to reduce the errors in its predictions. When it predicts the wrong next word, the system corrects itself. When it predicts the right one, it strengthens that pattern. You don't need to know the math behind it. Just imagine a huge network of tiny adjustments, billions of them, slowly shaping the model's ability to predict language accurately. Eventually, after enough training, the model becomes surprisingly skilled at generating text. It can answer questions because it has seen millions of examples of how humans ask and answer questions. It can explain things because it has seen countless explanations. It can write stories, emails, poems, and summaries because it has seen those forms too. That brings us to an important difference: training versus inference. Training is when the model learns, adjusting millions of internal connections over and over again. Inference is what happens when you type a message into ChatGPT. At that moment, it isn't learning anymore. It's using what it already learned to generate an answer one token at a time. Think of training as school. Think of inference as using what you learned to solve problems. Now, why does ChatGPT sound so smart? Because humans write a lot of intelligent text. And when the model sees those examples, it learns the patterns behind them. If millions of people have explained photosynthesis, then the model can produce an explanation of photosynthesis. Not because it understands plants, it doesn't, but because it has learned how humans explain plants. ChatGPT appears to reason, but the reasoning is really an emergent property of prediction. When predicting the next word, it selects the one that fits the pattern of a logical argument, a clear explanation, or a well-structured response. It's imitation on a massive scale. But imitation isn't perfect. This is why ChatGPT makes mistakes. Since the model doesn't truly understand what it's saying, it sometimes generates answers that sound confident but are wrong. This is called hallucination, when the model produces incorrect information in a believable way. Why does that happen? Because the model isn't checking facts. It's predicting what text should come next. And the most likely next words aren't always the right ones. Another limitation: ChatGPT has no personal experience. It can talk about sadness, but it doesn't feel sad. It can describe a sunset, but it has never seen one. Everything it says comes from patterns in the text it was trained on. So if ChatGPT has these limitations, why is it still so powerful? Because language itself is powerful. Language holds knowledge, logic, instructions, emotions, creativity, and structure. By learning to generate language well, ChatGPT can help explain complex topics, support creative writing, summarize large amounts of information, translate languages, brainstorm ideas, or simply talk to you in a natural way. It amplifies your abilities, not by thinking for you, but by giving you access to the patterns of how humans think with words. Now let's talk about safety and alignment in a simple way. Large language models must be aligned with human values. That means making sure they don't generate harmful advice, dangerous instructions, hateful content, or personal data. To do this, models are fine-tuned, using examples of safe and respectful behavior. Human reviewers rate responses, and the model adjusts based on those ratings. This doesn't make the model perfect, but it helps guide its output towards safety. Finally, let's look ahead to the future of large language models. They're becoming more capable, more accurate, and more helpful. Newer models can access tools, search the internet, interact with apps, remember past conversations, reason more effectively, and even handle images, audio, or video. As these systems improve, they become more like assistants that can help with life work, creativity, and learning. But the key idea to remember is this: ChatGPT is not magic, it's math. Math guided by patterns of human language. And when you understand how it works, you can use it more effectively, asking better questions, recognizing its limits, and seeing where it shines. Understanding machines helps us use them better. And large language models are no exception. They're powerful, helpful, and surprisingly human-like. But at their core, they're simply prediction engines, learning the patterns of how people write and speak. And now you understand the simple story of how ChatGPT works without jargon, without complexity, just the clear logic behind one of the most interesting technologies of our time. ChatGPT isn't magic, and it isn't a mind. It's a prediction engine trained on patterns of human language, generating text one step at a time. And once you understand that, the technology becomes far less mysterious and far more useful. Knowing how it works helps you ask better questions, recognize when it makes mistakes, and use it as a tool instead of treating it like a person. Large language models will continue to improve, becoming more accurate, more capable, and more helpful. But their foundation will always be this simple idea: patterns learned at massive scale turned into predictions that feel like conversation. If you enjoyed this plain explanation and want more videos that make complex ideas easy to understand, feel free to subscribe and explore the next topic with us. Until then, stay curious, because the more you understand the tools of the future, the better you can use them.